Okay, so this basically, there are 14 modules in this training and across 5 days, right? Of course, we do over this course over online and the physical training. So let me just go through so-called the journey, like what is the 14 module that will be so-called covered inside the solution architecture course. The first itself, of course, the first topic itself will be the solution architect jobs, right? So we need to do correct alignment. So we cannot say, oh, solution architect do everything from A to Z, including network problem, printer problem, or even like the switch in your office not working, call solution architect. No, right? Solution architect have a definitive job scope and the role and the contribution, expectation, etc. Right? So this is basically about the solution architect. Yeah. So that's topic number one. Then after we understand the solution architect role, right? Everybody agree on it. Then we deep dive into the beta book, right? So this topic, I'm going also to give you some feel on the what is the beta book. Business technology architecture body of knowledge, right? They got the 5 pillars, they got the 5 specialization, how they interact, right? And what sort of method that the beta book uses today. Okay, so it's basically about beta book, business technology architecture body of knowledge. Then the third one is about deliverable. So when we talk about solution, we really is the front line or front end of the team to do deliverable. The rest of architect can, of course, there was some deliverable, but more not tangible, more on the blueprint. But solution architect is really going to work closely with the SI or with the project management team to really deliver a solution, right? So we're talking about what do we deliver as solution architect. And this is very, very important. Then the next one is about change management. So the change management basically is that many of solution architect today, actually, they don't really do the real solution architecture job scope as defined in ISA. So the change management here basically is about the changing the way we work, right? So what sort of engagement that we need to do? Do we often engage with the stakeholders? If yes, how do we do that? And what sort of so-called architecture canvases that we can use so that our job can become more productive and more effective? So this is basically about the change management. Then next one, we talk about the digital customer. So digital customer, I think, is by default. And anything that we do now, we need to think about digital customer. So they got the different persona. We need to know that digital customer have the high expectation. So they expect to be served 24/7. They also need to be empowered, right? So basically, they need to be able to do self-service. So this is basically a characteristic of digital customer. So in the solution that we develop or design, we need to think a lot on the digital customer as our end recipient. Yeah. So after we understand about digital customer, our business needs to be digital because meanings that, oh, if you want to provide 24/7 operation, and our business only work from Monday to Friday from 9 to 5, then we can't serve the digital customer. So how can we digitalize our business? What are the things that we need to do, right? Your process, your function, your services, and how can we empower our customer to do self-service? So this basically is the concept, the thinking that every architect or solution architect need to have in mind, right? So digital business. So the next one actually is about digital employee. So what do you mean by digital employee? So basically the employee itself, right? So of course now with the help of AI, right? Even you are not around, they still can run, right? So we need to think about how can we make employee become productive, right? So basically they can run without any say time boundary or geographical boundary. So basically, how we can leverage a lot on the today context of technology, artificial intelligence, how we can help to replace not replacing make it redundant, but to substitute our job, right? So that we can make our business become digital and also serve digital customer, right? So that's basically digital employee. And of course, the next one about digital operation. So digital operation means what are the operation that we need to do so-called manually or require a lot of resources or overhead. So basically, how can we digitalize all that? So this basically the same within the same ISA beta book, I call it IBAM, which I'm going to describe to you. So basically about imagine digital customer, B mean digital, become digital business, and achieve digital employee and maximize digital operation. So these are very, very core, right? The 5, 6, 7, 8 are very, very core to the beta book, right? So once you get this concept right, then we can move on to the next one. Then we are ready to build a solution, right? So now we need to understand the business case. So what is the business case we are in? And of course, architect cannot escape from this context about the business case. You need to know what is the business case about the solution that you are working on, right? Is there a strong business case? So this is the topic that understanding the business case. Once you understand the business case, then you go next step is basically to understand the requirement and option and the decision. How do you make particular decision? What are the options out there? So these are the job of the architect typically. Of course, each of the this topic 14 module, there will be a one or two or three canvas workshop that will be presented to you at the end of this module. So basically, it's a pretty hands-on practical training, not only theory, but of course, in this introduction, I will just give you a glance on the journey, what sort of experience that you will learn. So of course, the feedback I think has been very positive. I posted in my LinkedIn. Quite number of the students are actually, giving a 5-star review on this solution architecture, because I think this is the only true solution architecture training that are independent of the vendors and the technology. It's really about your skill and competency to deliver solution about technology investment that deliver value to the business. So once we understand requirement, option, and decision at the module 10, then we go to module 11. How do we realize value and outcome, right? How do we know that our project is successful, and what outcome or benefit that our business will realize from the solution that you deliver? So that's basically module 11. Then, of course, we continue with the module 12, right? We involve in the project. So after we come up with all the justification, ROI, etc., then we go into the agile project. So what are your role? How can you be productive and align, basically sing and dance together with the agile team? Because I think today many organizations are moved towards the agile team, some of course hybrid, right? So how architect role inside the agile project? Then, of course, next, talking about data and information cloud architecture, right? So after that, you need to deploy, you need to leverage on the cloud. Of course, the data and information are very critical, especially today in the AI world or AI era, right? So many of the organization actually, they have the data, but most of the information or the data are residing not in the database, not in the system, but in the human being, in the staff itself, right? So architect need to know and dig up this, what they call it, tribal knowledge. So this is basically data and information cloud architecture, about how can we extract the information. So when we go embark into, say, the AI adoption, etc., we know what data we need to present. Of course, last but not least, in this solution architecture course is about world-class architecture. So how can we sustain our architecture to the higher maturity? So these are basically the 14 module, right, that will be presented across 5 days. So I think there will be some online training on this. And of course, on this social architecture, we also do run physical classes in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Indonesia. 5 days if you want to go on the personal learning journey, right? I mean, in person, physical learning journey. Otherwise, of course, you can also attend the online training. I think online training we have conducted a couple of rounds, and I think the feedback also very, very positive. Yeah. Okay, so I've covered an overview of the module. Let me now zoom in into the learning outcome. What are typically the learning outcome you learn from this solution architecture training, right? Of course, you understand a working solution architecture role based on the standard, right? So not based on what your boss or your HR has said, but this is about industry standard. Of course, understand value, number of resources, depth of coverage, and measurement for architecture team. So how many architects do we need to get involved? And then what are so-called the depth of the coverage of the deliverable that you need to look at? And of course, understand the structure and method of working for the architects. So we need to understand about what are the intersection or touch point between solution architect with the business architect, with the information architect, with the software architect, and with the infrastructure architect, right? And also, how do you basically cover the various stakeholders? So this basically understand the structure. And of course, understand the task and output of a solution architect. So everyone have the clear understanding, right? You're working as solution architect. These are the expected output that we need to deliver. Yeah. So this basically the learning outcome of the solution architecture course. So of course, now the next one, we are being so-called presented about what is actually a solution architect, right? If I'm a solution architect, who am I, right? What am I supposed to do? Okay. And of course, am I the leader of technology for a project? right? So because why? Oh, every project require a signatory. Does someone sign the so-called architecture? Am I the one who signed, right? So basically you're asking, am I the solution architect who signed? So what happens if after I sign, but something goes wrong? Am I liable? Right? So something that we really need to know. Yeah. And of course, the review of technology for a set of projects. So am I the one that going to review the technology? And of course, if yes, what are the method? What if people challenge? Why don't you choose that technology? Why you select this technology? And of course, if the selection turn out to be positive, happy ending, everybody is okay. But if the selection becomes sour, that means something that you choose not right, and people will challenge us, right? I don't know how many of you that you work long enough, you join a team or a company, you might ask, who is the, of course, I don't want to use the word idiot, but you might think in your head, who is the idiot that choosing this platform? Okay, so this type of question keep popping up when we go move along different team or different company, right? So how do you know that you already selected the best technology for this particular solution? Yeah. And of course, are you the business expert, right? Are you the provider of scope and cost, right? So we need to know also the impact of the selection of the particular platform in terms of the scope and the cost. Yeah. Okay. So who are solution architect? And I think most of the solution architect coming from this background, right? So most of them are coming from 60 to 70% based on the ISA research. They are coming from the software development background, right? Because it's the nearest to the solution. So typically the infrastructure, the one that are doing network, server, etc., it will stay in the infrastructure domain. But typically most of 60-70%, two-thirds of the solution architect are coming from the software development background, right? So typically they have led 1 or 5 IT projects depending on the scope and experiences. So these are the typical solution architect. They call it majority, yeah. And of course, solution architect also have two paths, right? The first path, basically, they call it specialist. Okay, so specialist basically is someone acting as a solution architect for a particular type of project. Yeah, so perhaps it's a project about the telco, about the financial, about insurance, about healthcare. So they are very, very specialized in that. Yeah, or someone they call it also a career solution architect that are moving towards enterprise architecture role, right? So basically, moving from the specialized towards a generic architecture, right? Because enterprise architecture covering about end-to-end, right? About end-to-end, also covering a lot of the key stakeholders, the direction, the strategy, and etc. So solution architecture basically is the downstream, the enterprise architecture is the upstream, and they are all also is connected. Yeah, so this are basically the two paths of solution architect that we all need to understand. Actually, this slide is taken from the module number 1 to understand about who are solution architect and what they do. Yeah. Okay. Of course, these are the formal definition of the solution architecture, the art and science of designing and delivering a technology strategy against a measured set of goals, right? So basically, they got a measured set of goals and objective that solution architect need to deliver, right? And of course, typically there will be a time constraint set of activities. I don't think we are given free time. We're typically given a very limited time. So we really need to deliver value of the project within a given time limit, yeah, the constraint. And of course, the architecture document and artifacts describing the technology value of a project. So basically, solution architect are responsible for that. And of course, any architectural relevant artifacts, right, that are delineating the technology strategy and value, right? So we always focus on the how can we realize the strategy and how can we deliver value. So this is basically the job of the solution architect. In contrast today, of many of the solution architect, typically, if you ask them about business, they will tell you, oh, sorry, Aaron, I think you have asked the wrong team. I'm from the solution architecture team. You need to ask or talk with my boss, right? My boss that deal directly with the business. But the fact is that if you can't even articulate your solution, how the solution benefit the business, you are not fit into the solution architecture role, right? Of course, I'm saying this because it has been proven, right, in many of the engagement. I mean, I've been working in the last 30 years and I see how the project success and how the project failure is totally depend on the architecture involved in the project. Those who can understand the business value, they can excel very, very far, right? They can become a successful. But those who are focusing on the technology alone and can't really be bothered about the business challenges or business strategy, I mean, they can deliver a solution there, but I think the solution having issue in the middle or in the short run, right? Because the fact is that what we do, solution that we deliver to the business need to evolve with the business and also need to support the business. So in order to do that, we all need to know the business, because if not, then it's a very, very challenging role. Okay, so how has the architect role changed? So this solution architecture yesterday. So most of the architects are involved in the IT project, right? So when the IT project got some problem or system got problem, the core solution architect. So more on the reactive kind of the role and pretty much IT focus, right? I think today we need to look at the, of course, end user, or we need to be able to do road mapping. So we need to know that when we are involved in the particular project, we need to know the so-called the roadmap of the particular solution, right? And where they are going in the version 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, everything, all the features map directly into the business, right? So this basically is expected of the today's solution architecture. And of course, responsible for value realization. Value realization means they know exactly how much is the investment, the cost of the project, and what's the value that supposed to be delivered, right? And of course, organization change management is always, because when you deliver a solution, you will definitely introduce some changes, right? So the changes itself will impact the people and the business and also the technology, right? So a solution architect need to look into this matter. And of course, incorporate new processes like Agile and DevOps, right? Which push the coordination part of the role throughout the life cycle of continuous integration, continuous delivery. CI/CD is a must, right? It's the integrated part of the life cycle when you involve as a solution architect inside the project. Okay, so just highlight the difference between the specialist and generalist, right? So let's look at the specialist. So the specialist solution architect, of course, first, you still need to focus on the business, but you can branch out into the information architecture, infrastructure architecture, or solution architecture domain, right? So you can focus on depth of technology, domain, or industry, right? So these are basically specialized solution architects. And in terms of the career track planning, so you recognize a specialized needs in engagement model. So basically you have a particular strength, right? Perhaps your strength in the business with information, or business with the infrastructure, or business with the software, or perhaps you have three, right? You are strong in the business, information, and software, or business, infrastructure, and information. Yeah. And of course, your primary impact is a project assignment, and primary driver is personal career objective. So basically, you want to grow in your career. And of course, percents of specialists relate to industry, and of course, project across the enterprise. How do we assign architect or resources across projects? Yeah. So if you are the generalist, typically you are looking at the overall, right? So you're looking at the connectedness within the organization. So typically you'll be focusing a lot on the enterprise level in your decision. And of course, you're looking at the focusing on the industry trend, and then of course talking about human dynamic and the BTS. BTS basically is the business technology strategy. Yeah. And in terms of the career track planning, of course, define the ratio of general to specialist. So you look at the engagement model, which one that you will be involved more, right? So you're looking at the generalist or the specialist. So the specialist, for instance, on the data architecture, in-depth deep dive on the data structure, you engage a subject matter expert to work with you, right? Because you're looking at the guiding them in terms of your general focus on the solution architecture. Of course, looking at the business model, management track again, enterprise track. Yeah. Okay, so I think the one of the key challenges on the solution architecture role, basically you need to balance, and you need to influence, right? Different parties or different group of stakeholders in the organization, right? So of course, in terms of the stakeholders, we need to capture their requirement, and then in terms of the standard, of course, they got the target state, the strategy goal. In terms of the technology, of course, they got ROI, constituent value, project, or the timeline or budget. And solution architect actually need to look at these four factors, and how can we balance and influence them accordingly, right? For the benefit of the project to be successful. Okay. So a solution architect sometimes has the conflicting forces, right? Or influences which constrain the output. So I think this is why we need to have make a decision. That's why in the ISA they come out the architecture decision record canvas. So basically you record about how can you bring impact to the stakeholders, deliver enterprise, and then show technology value and also make the project successful. So how can you have four of them together, right? Instead of only make customer or stakeholder happy, but the project failed. We can't do that. So we need to really balance and influence all parties. Yeah. And of course, solution need to avoid bias, looking for the most balanced output. And of course, some the concern stakeholders are tactical, right? So we need to focus always on the enterprise goal and how can we balance between these four area, right? Between stakeholders, enterprise, technology value, and the project, right? And of course, sometimes we need to compromise. What they call it architecture drift, right? Not sure you heard about this architecture drift. So basically, as a solution architect, we need to avoid this solution drift, right? Sometimes if the drift is unavoidable, we can record the drift, right? We can capture that as the technical debt, or if you implement AI, become AI debt and architecture debts, right? And of course, when you embark into the particular solution or new initiative, you need to clear some of the debts, right? So the debts cannot be accumulated until you out of control and become bankrupt. Okay. So of course, not many today's solution architect highlighting a lot of debts, right? But I think it's a must that in the context of the today, especially in the AI world, the debt is can be escalating at the I think the rapid exponential rate, right? And this of course can cause a so-called disaster to the organization, right? When the technology crippled because of the AI, right? So we really need to have the proper architecture so that we can have the healthy depths, right, between the technical AI and architecture depths. Yeah. So in terms of the depths, I think I have another webinar that I am addressing. I've addressed so-called technical depth and the architecture depths. Yeah. Right. So the next one is the component, right? About the solution. So we need also to ensure that the solution architecture itself address the business, yeah, business architecture, software architecture, infrastructure, and the information, right? So a solution architecture basically develop the view, the architecture view that include in the business, information, infrastructure, and solution, and how that view itself, right, relies so-called what the business trying to do, right? And turn that into the solution, into the system, into the IT project that the user or the business or the customer can use, can interact with. Huh? So of course, part of the difficulty is that a solution architect often needs skill in its architecture domain specialization, right? So sometimes solution architect only good in the infrastructure, or only good in the information, or only good in the business, only good in the software. So we need to have a balanced so-called knowledge domain because that is the expected of a solution architect. So solution architect cannot say, oh, I'm the solution architect, I'm only good in software. Then you can remain as a software architect, right? But when you come to the solution, you need to understand the business, you need to translate into the software, you also need to know what information the business need and how you build the infrastructure to run that solution, right? So the expectation is there, okay, from a solution architect. Of course, some of the organization facing difficulty. That's why the concept social architecture from ISA, right, help navigate those complications. Because if you talk to the vendor, you can imagine, right, solution architect delivered by the vendor A. What do you learn? And everything is about the vendor A, right? In terms of configuration, in terms of setup, in terms of programming or scripting, etc. But in the real world, there are many vendors. Then how can you work with the rest of the platform? If you only focus on the particular solution architect from the particular vendor, the answer is you can't move, right? That's why you need to understand the concept, right? And then you can apply it to the multiple vendor or multiple implementation. So that's what ISA is trying to develop. And of course, the development of this body of knowledge, it took them almost 20 years, right? It's not the overnight, oh, in 2 months I can develop a body of knowledge for solution architect. No, you can't, right? Because need to be validated by the many architecture profession, architecture practitioners all over the world, right? Not only in the one country, not enough. I need to make sure that work in Asia, work in Europe, work in America, right? So these are the typical qualitative and the quantitative work that ISA has developed in the last 20 years to sharpen the beta book. Huh? Right. So what solution architect do? right? Typically, of course, select and recommend high value generation approaches for technology investment. This always, right? Because when you invest in the technology today, there isn't anything cheap, right? Or the technology investment typically very expensive. So we need to get the solution architect to quantify and qualify that investment. Of course, we need to generate the document, right? The artifacts and how we can define the target state value from a new technology or solution that we are going to deliver. Of course, we review design architecture artifact from the extended team. So extended team members mean could be coming from the data scientist team, could be coming from the AI team, and etc. So we review and we understand the connectedness between various so-called proposal, target architecture of the solution. Of course, represent the benefit and cost of chosen technical direction with the stakeholders, right? And of course, ensure ongoing delivery. Again, target state, right? Through the build and run phases, right? How we can continue integration, continue deployment method. And of course, evaluate the effectiveness of delivered solution versus planned value, right? Communicate value generation, and of course, ensure compliance with internal and external standard, and also all the regulation. So these are some of the expectation of a solution architect. So cannot say, oh, I only know about this particular software. Compliant is, can you talk with my governance team? No, you can't, because in your software, when you deliver or when you configure, you know all the requirement on the compliant regulation. So something that cannot be compromised. Right. The next one, the key attribute of solution architect. Right. First, I think translation between architecture domain of knowledge in the business info software and infra. Right. So we need to be able to harmonize and also find the right balance between all the architecture domain forces. Right. So when we deliver a solution. And secondly, I think we need to deliver value, right? And of course, when we talk about value, we also need to monitor the risk, and sometimes we need to do the trade-off. So what do you mean by trade-off? Trade-off means something that, I wish I can have the best choice, but I can't. So I need to balance the risk and the value that I can deliver, right? With the given, say, limited resources and also the timeline. Okay. Third one, I think talk about communication skill. So I think this is something very, very important. So architect need to have a platform how to communicate. And I think fortunately, ISA has developed almost 80 to 100 canvases that we can use to communicate about our architecture, right? So anything that you do, I think I did earlier and on my presentation about all the icon in the beta book, all that can be represented into the canvas, right? So this is the way to communicate our architecture, to get the buy-in, and also what they call it, to socialize our architecture. Of course, technical job. Technical job is very, very important, right? You like it or not, they need someone to sign off, right? So this is where also the job of solution architect. And of course, technical ability to troubleshoot system and understand current state of the project. So architect typically understand about, how many resources needed, whether the timeline is realistic, and whether the budget is realistic, and also whether the platform has been selected correctly. So these are the job of a solution architect, yeah, in basically in a nutshell. Okay, so these are the continuation, right, about how solution architect typically executing a day-to-day operation, right, and typically they are liaison with other teams, right, outside the solution architecture team itself, right. So for instance, when you want to have a domain understanding, right, you need to do a requirement analysis. Typically, you need to share with business analysts, right? So you also collaborate with the business analysts. Then when you do customer interface for functionality, risk, and schedule estimation, so typically we work closely with the project manager, right? So project manager basically will be happy if you can contribute in terms of helping them to validate schedule estimation, functionality, and risk. Because sometimes the challenge of the project manager is that they don't get the quality input, right? So the requirement, the scope are not clear, are not concise. That's why they call it scope creep, right? Or what we call it garbage in. So solution architect is trying to filter this garbage, so make sure that the project manager have the quality information. Then of course, when you select technology platform boundary for the solution to meet the business needs. So architect shared with the enterprise architect, right? So enterprise architect is the architect at the strategic level. So the solution architect work closely with the enterprise architect, right? So in the domain of the TOGAF, right? So enterprise architect actually in the A, B, C, D of phases. Solution architect is playing a key role in the E, F, G and H, change management. So these are so-called the collaboration interfaces or a section that and solution architect work very closely with the enterprise architect. Okay, of course, there are many other jobs that actually collaborate and work closely together. So when you translating the enterprise standard into specific team processes, quality goal, and tools and platform selection. So architect, solution architect work with the other architects. So other architect mean could be information, software, infrastructure architect. Then when you do prototyping and alternative assessment within project constraints, so typically when, for instance, developing an RIP, so the solution architect work closely with the development team, right? So could be with the procurement and etc. Okay, when you're implementing pattern, supporting project deliverable, so architects work closely with the QA team and also project management team, right? So there are many role that or intersection that architect, solution architect itself cannot work alone, but collaborate with other project team or other role within the organization.